Hello friends, and I'm back with another fall DIY, and this time I'm creating some of my favorite type of DIYs, which are high-end dupes. I am working with this pumpkin that I've had on hand, but the little tip broke, and I also am using a sleeve of a sweater. Now I had made a pillow out of this sweater, so I had a couple sleeves left over, and I've DIYed a couple other things with it, but I had this one left, so I thought I'd dress up the pumpkin. I have seen these pumpkins over at Kirklands as well as other stores, anywhere from $20 and up depending on the size, and I thought I could recreate this for a lot cheaper, especially since I had all of these supplies. Welcome. I'm so glad you guys decided to press that play button and hang out with me for next 15 minutes or so. I am enjoying coming up with all of these DIYs. I have been searching the webs for all sorts of different decor that I can dupe. It has definitely been one of my favorites, and the savings are huge. Sometimes, you know, things don't work out, but most of the times I do love things that I create, and even though they're dupes, they're quite unique to me as well, so that kind of is important as well. So once I had this sleeve cut off to the side, I just shoved it inside and hot glued at the bottom. And now I'm going to be adding a stem, which is off of a different pumpkin that one of my four-legged friends chewed up but left the stem. So I'm going to use a hot glue to glue it on. I think this pumpkin turned out so cute, and I can't wait to use it in my decor. I love decorating with pumpkins, and I have tons of them. Next DIY, I will be repurposing this Dollar Tree sign I picked up just recently, and although I love the buffalo check, I do not love how sparkly it is, so I'm just flipping it just because it's a little bit easier to repurpose. And I'm going to use some painter's tape just to section off an area where I don't want the paint to go. And as you saw, I am using Annie Sloan original, which is an off-white chalk paint, and I'm going to be applying I'm just dipping the paintbrush once for each from the bottom and the top, and giving it a light coat. I wanted to create again that rustic look. I will be leaving the middle as is because it kind of reminded the piece that I'm duping had a look of a wood in the middle with some grains. So I thought just leaving it as is and that brown showing through would give me a very, very similar look. Now I'm going to go with a pencil and just write things out, and I'm so glad that I did, because I don't know what I was doing, but the word that I wrote out was way too small. So I ended up erasing it and redoing it again. Once I was happy with the way that looked, I went over with a brown permanent marker just to thicken up the lines and make them more show up. Now, I know somebody will say, I'll write out, oh, this is how you spell pumpkin. I do know how to spell a pumpkin. I was kind of going by the look that the Kirklands had on their pumpkin, and that the upper part of an M looks like an L even on there. So I was trying to color it in, but it does say pumpkin. That is an M. I know it kind of looks like an L, an N, not an M, but it is an M. For the top, I did not use a pencil because it was fairly straightforward and easy. So I felt like I couldn't mess it up. And I'm using a black permanent marker. I think this DIY was so simple to make, and I think it's going to look great with my style of decor that I'm going with this season. The last DIY that I will be sharing with you is probably my favorite. I love trucks, as you all know, and I am using a truck from Dollar Tree, a cutting board from Dollarama, and some napkins from Dollar Tree or Dollarama, I'm not quite sure, and some of that buffalo check fabric that I've had left over still from last year, but they did come from Dollar Tree. This is a bamboo cutting board, and it's always a little bit hard to make it look wood stain, because I find sometimes the stain doesn't really sit well on it. So I typically just paint it, but I thought, well, what if I just rubbed some acrylic paint on it with some rag instead of brushing it on, and I actually ended up loving how it turned out. So I'm using just plain brown acrylic paint and just a rag, and then just going in a direction of the bamboo grain, I just rubbed it on. And like I said, I love the way this turned out. The wood grain was showing through, and like I said, I've tried wood stains before, and they just did not end up looking all that great. Almost, if I felt like it almost sat on top, it didn't kind of penetrate through, and this turned out really, really good. I'm so pleased. I'm sure I'm not the first one to discover this technique, but I love the end result nevertheless. This did not take long to dry at all. I did take off a lot of the extra paint that was on there, and just to show you what the difference in color is. So while that was drying, I moved on to work on this truck. So I wanted to cover the whole truck with the fabric, and I will be using a tacky glue to do so. So I just spread the glue all over the truck, and then I glue on the fabric, pressing it down so that way it gets into all the little grooves. Just using a sponge brush to apply the tacky glue. Now, originally I was going to cover the tires with it too, but then I decided against it and ended up painting the tires with some acrylic paint. I used scissors as well as rotary cutter to cut around the fabric, just so the rotary cutter worked better than the scissors. It's just I could not get into all the crevices, so that's where I used the scissors instead. Once I was done cutting it all out, I didn't care that there were little bits of fabric overlapping it, because I ended up taking Mod Podge, brushing it on, and just gluing the fabric to, like, folding it over and just gluing it that way. And that seemed to have worked, instead of trying to get into all the little crevices. Even with the scissors, it was a little hard, probably because my scissors are horrible. But yeah, so that's the Mod Podge did work, just by like folding the fabric over it. And then I went ahead and painted the wheels with the black acrylic paint, but I also felt that the truck's definition wasn't there. Like, I could see it, but it wasn't really showing through as much as I would have liked it to. So I ended up accenting some areas with the acrylic paint, just going lightly over it, just to make it pop out more. And I really like the way that ended up looking. When I originally saw this piece at on a video at Kirklands, we don't actually have Kirklands. I tend to watch a lot of Kirkland haul videos and get my ideas there, and then I look it up online. But their piece had the pumpkins on there, so I was trying to figure out what would be the best way to add the pumpkins, and then I came up with this idea to Mod Podge the napkin pumpkin, cut it out and Mod Podge it on, and I love the way this turned out. It looked so good in person. I'm sure at the end you'll see how well it looked. And then now I needed some lettering. You can totally use your Cricut machine. I just went to freehanded, and again I'm going ahead with a pencil, and then I'm going to go over it. I was going to use my markers, and I always try and use them, but I find that they're never bright enough. They're so dull, and they just don't show up as much as I would like them to. So I did go over it with a marker, but then I went over it again with that chalkboard marker from Dollar Tree, and I loved the way that looked. So as you can see, it's quite dull, not as bright as I would like it to be. But the chalkboard marker to the rescue. I just love the way this turned out, and I hope that you do too. And if you do, please give this video a thumbs up. Let me know which one was your favorite, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. And make sure you are subscribed if you're stopping by for the very first time. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video.